Hello, everyone. Greetings to friends and colleagues around the world, and a call to friends and colleagues, physicians and medical scientists around the world to go back to your textbooks and recall what we all should know, which is that the immune system is trained from birth onward, at birth, to combat viral agents and diseases. You do not have to vaccinate to be protected against virtually almost all viruses that infect the respiratory tract or the oral tract. So, could I have the first slide? Remember that when a cell makes a protein, then there are lymphocytes that are there to recognize fragments of this protein that appear on the surface of that cell. And these lymphocytes have the responsibility and duty to attack those cells and to try to destroy them. All babies who are born have these cells that recognize the fragments of virtually all proteins existent. However, the great thing about this is that if self is expressed, these are the black proteins and fragments, then the cells that are responsible for attacking these cells will be silenced throughout life or kept in check. However, if a protein is non-self, all viral proteins are non-self, or virtually all of them, then the lymphocytes are not held in check. They will come out and attack that cell and try to destroy it. That is why it is false to think that the immune system has to be trained, that it is immature when a baby is born. This is simply not true. At the beginning, of course, the process of attack and destroying that cell takes longer than later. But as a team directed against any foreign protein, if a coronavirus come around, the red proteins and the red fragments, then the corona team jumps up and trains and learns how to kill that cell. And the next time a related virus comes in, this team will be strong and will destroy that cell more efficiently. Now, one thing that people have been lulled into believing is that when a virus changes, when it mutates, when you have a variant, the lymphocytes will no longer recognize them. And this is, of course, absolutely wrong. With very, very few exceptions, changes that take place in only one fragment at a time, so that the other fragments, for instance, of the spike protein, remain the same. And that is why long-lasting immunity is existent towards the variants that are created. You don't need to make new cells that will recognize the variants. They are there already. This is cross-protection. Now go to the next slide, please. So when the T cells are activated, they also activate their brothers, the B cells. And these B cells on the right side make the antibodies. The antibodies attach to the whole protein and not the fragments. So now we have the case that if these proteins are expressed on viruses that are coming in from outside, the antibodies may have the possibility of stopping their entry into the cells. However, and this is something so important, if you vaccinate someone intramuscularly, the antibodies that are made are never on the surface of the airways to stop the virus entering the airway, lung epithelium. They will be in the blood, and therefore they cannot be effective. And that is what we've been trying to say for a year now, these vaccinations against coronaviruses and whatever are bound to fail because the antibodies are not at the right site. Now, if you go around injecting mRNA or gene-based vaccines into the muscle, those vaccines are going to reach the bloodstream, and they will reach the lymph nodes, of course. Now, in the lymph nodes, if cells in the lymph nodes start making the spike protein or any other virus protein, then all cells that line the vessel walls make this protein, then the antibodies will be there to attack. And that's exactly what's going to happen. Those antibodies will now bind to the cells that are making these viral proteins, and the antibodies will cause complement to be activated. So there are two executional systems in our body, immune executors. The T lymphocytes, and they cause silent death because these cells die silently. There's no inflammation. But complement is a violent killer, violent death. And death ensues with a lot of inflammation going on. So if someone is vaccinated once, the antibodies will not be there until after 2 weeks. But upon every booster, there will be antibodies there ready to mount the violent attack. And then the cells will be attacked from two sides, the lymphocytes and antibody complement. This is unprecedented in immunology, all right? So if this happens in the lymph node, if a lymphocyte takes up the mRNA, then that lymphocyte will come under attack by its brothers and by antibody and complement. And the destruction of lymphocytes in the lymph nodes can lead to immune deficiency, and paradoxically, it can also it can cause the opposite, but this is something we won't go into at the moment. But it can also cause a breakdown of protection against tumors. If a lymphocyte is responsible for keeping tumor growth under control and those lymphocytes are destroyed, then you will have tumor growth. Next slide. Now, when the mRNA vaccines enter the bloodstream, which they always do, then of course they will be contacting the endothelial cells. And this is a blood vessel that you see here. And you see the mRNA packaged in the lipid nanoparticles that now enters the endothelial cell. And then in 3, the endothelial cell will start making the protein, in this case, the spike. In 4, you see that the fragments are recognized by lymphocytes, which will attack. And in 5, you see that if antibodies are present, which is the case upon each and every booster, then there will be an attack by complement as well. And then in 6, you see that the endothelial cells sloughs off, it is killed. And what happens is that, of course, the vessel will become the site of clot formation, because every injury to the endothelial wall will cause clots to form. And these clots will form in large vessels, in small vessels, in the smallest vessels and capillaries, probably at sites where the blood flow is slow, okay, which are in the capillaries and veins, because there's more time for the cells to take up the genes. That's why our prediction was made a long time ago that we will be looking at a lot of clot formation in the smallest vessels. And this can happen from top to toe. The second thing that will happen, of course, is that the vaccines will leak out of these vessels into the surrounding tissues. And when the surrounding tissues are taken up, if the liver cells take them up, they will come under the same attack. If heart cells take them up, if lung cells or brain cells take them up, they will also be